Now that we've finished blocking in all the details across the model, we're going to go back over everything that we've done now and begin detailing the different sections. We're going to be starting here in the front with the cockpit exterior and the bottom of the nose. The first part that we're going to be focusing on in this video is the windshield area. And if we go ahead and look at our modeling sheets, we can see that we have these various details in here, this kind of paneling along the windshield where the pieces of glass are then in between each of these metal sheets. Then we also have the nose area right in here. We've got some headlights, this kind of vent area, the vents back here. If we switch over to the side, we can also see that we've got some more lights right in here, another vent type thing. Then the kind of the undercarriage of the cockpit area, which won't have too many details, but we'll have the housing component for the wheel, also these grooves right back here. And so we'll try and get in all these different elements, although in this video we're just going to be focusing on the windshield, and then we'll move on to each of the pieces as we go along. So going back over to layer 1, what I'd like to do is first, with the windshield area selected, let's go ahead and hit tab to go into edit mode, and I want to go ahead and remove this nose cone part from the mesh so that it's part of the other objects. So let's go ahead and select it, and since we have a fairly complex selection in here in terms of, we can't just really box select around it without getting anything else, I'm going to go ahead and use the lasso select, which is by holding down control and then left click and dragging just around everything that you want, and you get this complex lasso shape that you can draw. We can just select that, and then let's just hit P to separate by selection, just like this, and that gives us another object. Just so that we stay nice and clean, let's go ahead and hit tab to leave edit mode, and just select that new object that we created, and let's just join it with the rest of this, the body paneling here, by shift right clicking on it, and then hitting Control J. Now we can reselect the windshield area, hit tab to go into edit mode, and you also notice that I'm in full screen mode right now, so let's just hit shift space to leave full screen mode, and I want to go ahead and add in a subsurf modifier to this, or a subdivision surface modifier, as it's actually called, so that we can start adding in some really nice smooth surfaces. So let's just go to add modifier and choose subdivision surface. On this, we can toggle down our mirror modifier for now, and I'm just going to increase the subdivisions to 2 and turn on optimal display. You'll notice that when I toggle optimal display, without it, we have the full subdivided wireframe here. With optimal display, we only have the original smoothed out wireframe, such that it gets less complex with our geometry. Okay, let's go ahead, and I just went back to full screen mode. I'm going to hit 3 to go into side view. And what I first want to do is make sure that everything is aligned nicely. You can see that in some cases it's not. For example, these vertices here really ought to be more over here so that we get this angle right there. We can then, since we moved them over, we need to move a little bit along the x-axis to ensure that we have a nice edge through here without getting any kind of bumps in the surface. These ones look good. This looks good. This one looks good. We'll add in some more edge loops right through here as we need them. But then we also have a small glass panel right in here that currently doesn't exist on our mesh. And so we need to go ahead and add that. And do remember that we had to do a fair bit of compensating on the reference as far as our front view is concerned. So if we look in here, this plate right here is the same thing here. But if we look at the selection, it goes down a lot further on the side view than it does on the front view. So we just need to be aware of those kinds of things. So to create this last glass panel, I'm just going to go ahead and select this area right in here by using my box select twice. And actually, let's go all the way down to here, just so that we stay consistent with the rest of these. And then I'm just going to hit E to extrude and take it in along the normals, just like that. I can also go, actually, we'll go ahead and leave this. Let's add a slight border to this along this shape. So I'm just going to select these here, pull this back a little bit. We'll take these ones back as well. And then we're going to select this entire area and extrude that down again along the normals so that we have a border along that seam. You can see that we need to move it in along the x-axis a little bit. We can maybe go ahead and move these ones out a little along the x-axis, again just by hitting G and then hitting X to lock to the x-axis. We also have some interior faces right now where you can see that these face or this edge is causing problems due to this extrusion. And it also, when we extruded this right here, we also lost these faces right here. So let's just select these one at a time, hit F, and again, we're just selecting the 4 vertices, hitting F to fill in a face, do the same thing there, and then lastly, oh, that one already has it. And since we did that, we also want to go ahead and remove these bottom vertices right here, just because they're unnecessary and they're actually causing some problems. You'll notice that we're getting some weird pinching right in here. So let's just, with those selected, and this one here, by shift right clicking on them, oh, and I got one of the top ones by accident, we'll just hit X and delete vertices. So now you'll notice that our mesh is a lot smoother. Okay, we can kind of even things out in here just so that we have nice straight edges along. Will just help keep things a little bit cleaner. We can move this up a little bit. And then let's go ahead and assign our glass material to these faces. We just got these selected. I'm going to hit Shift Space to unmaximize my view. Go over to the Materials panel, and with the yellow selected, let's just click Assign. And you also notice that this border here should be the light gray, but right now it's the yellow. So we'll select light gray and click Assign. Okay, now we're actually going to be separating out the glass from the metal parts, but we're not going to be doing those just yet because we want to get things nice and sharp first, and then we'll separate them just to make things a little bit easier as far as selecting goes later down the road. Everything looks pretty good at this point as far as prep work for getting edges lined up. You know, we've got these sharp edges here where it's kind of angled off. You can see it better in the concept right here, here, and here. We've got those created so we can go ahead and add those in pretty quickly. So let's first select everything. We're going to hit W and shade smooth. Make sure that we don't have any normal problems, which in fact we do right down here. You'll notice this kind of black areas is because we've got the normals, or the direction that the faces point, are conflicting with each other. You know, some of them might be pointing out while some of them are pointing in. And so we just need to hit Control in while everything is selected, or find it from the toolbar over here to recalculate normals. And that will fix that almost immediately. Now, from this concept, we have this little window here, but on the other one, we don't, from our main concept here. And I'm actually going to vote that we go ahead and undo what we did in here, just because if we look at where the pilot's going to be sitting, right about in here, you know, there's really no need to have this down here. And actually having this kind of effect gives it a little bit of a sleeker look. So let's just go in here, and I'm going to first select this edge loop by Alt right clicking on it, and I'm just going to hit X and delete edge loop, and then I'll do the same thing down here. And you'll notice that just merged perfectly with that, basically just bringing it back exactly to where we started with. Let's go ahead and select this loop, again by Alt right clicking on it, and I just want to slide it up to about right here, such that it just kind of evens out this distance and this distance. To do this, we just hit Control E and edge slide, and that'll slide right up like that. We can make sure that everything's nice and even. Maybe we could go ahead and select these. Maybe we can, Control E, edge slide, bring them down just a little bit so we kind of keep this nice smooth arc in here. Maybe we'll do the same thing here, so we can Alt right click to select this. Maybe hit B and middle click and drag to deselect this portion. Then we'll hit Control E, slide that up. Maybe deselect this vertex, then slide that one, and then maybe select this one vertex by itself and move that up a little, just so that we're kind of keeping the shape of the mesh consistent. Okay, let's go ahead and we can start adding in some extra edge loops to determine where things are going to be sharp and where things won't be. For the most part, it's going to be sharp all over the place. So let's first focus on these metal paneling. So we'll start at the top, and I'm just going to hit Control R, add in an edge loop right across here vertically, left click to go into edge slide, and then I can just slide that over about right there. Now we can go ahead and add in another edge loop for the other side. So again, it's just Control R, left click, and slide it over. And right now you'll notice that we're only doing the metal paneling. We're not worrying about the inside of the glass or anything like that. We'll fix all of that momentarily. And I want to just kind of keep things consistent all the way throughout. So since I've added in 2 here, let's go ahead and do the same thing with this one over here. Again, that's Control R, left click, and then slide the edge, and left click again once you position it where you want. And we'll do another one on this side. And that way we can start to kind of see how the metal paneling is going to come together. I also want to go ahead and separate out the glass. So let's hit Control Tab to go into face mode. And this will just make it a lot easier to select all of the glass pieces. Or actually an even easier way would be, since we have our mesh isolated from the rest of the model here, we can just, in the materials panel, choose the yellow and click select. And while we're in face mode, that works really well. And now we can just hit Y to separate that, and almost immediately you can see things start to look a lot better. But we need to be aware of some things. For example, if we were to select everything and hit W and remove doubles, all of those vertices would be removed again, thus joining the pieces back together. And so what I want to do is go ahead and, with these selected, let's hit Shift H to hide everything else. And I now want to go ahead and merge, or I want to fill in the faces in between these. And this is mostly just so that things are nice and consistent and connected, so that we can connect this as one piece. But also, when we get to rendering this, we're also going to be adding in a solidify modifier to add in some thickness to it. And if we are to leave it just like this, from certain angles rendering this, you would actually be able to see the edge of the glass. And so we want to avoid that. So this will just be a consistent thickness all the way throughout. So let's just, with these selected, we'll hit F, and then fill each one of these, select 4 at a time, hit F, and you'll notice they're filling in with the gray, but that's okay because we can fix that in just a moment. Just like this. And then let's go ahead and bring this over along the x-axis a little bit, and then we can go ahead and just extrude this in, and you'll notice that it automatically locked to the grid due to having clipping enabled on our mirror modifier, and then we can just select this and hit F. Now, in order to set these to yellow, there's a couple different ways that we could do it. We could just go ahead and select everything. So I'm just tweaking these just a little bit. We could just select everything and assign yellow, or we can just click select, and since these vertices are all connected, and since we're in vertex mode, we can now just click assign, and it will assign everything to yellow. Let's hit Alt-H to unhide everything else. And actually, before I do that, let's hide that again. What I want to do, just so that we don't have any duplicate vertices that we might potentially merge by accident, let's select each one of these, and we're just going to hit Control-E and edge slide, and then move it over just a little bit towards the open window, or towards the glass section, except for in the case of the end here. And this way, we won't accidentally merge those if we were to accidentally click that. So now with that, we can hit select everything, or actually we don't have to select everything, we can just hit Alt-H, and now you can see those vertices are no longer sitting directly on top of each other, and gives us a really nice sharp effect there without having to add in too many more polygons. Okay, we can see I'd like to go ahead and move these vertices over a little bit, so let's just move them over such that they're in line with this. But when we do that, we need to be aware of the angle that we're working with here, so we'll just move those back over. You want to be really careful about creating any kind of lumpiness or anything on here, because that'll show up really bad when you render this, since we'll be rendering with a metallic material. And any kind of difference in the angles will show up as highlights. Okay, we can go ahead and add in some more edge loops now. Let's add in the ones here for these sharp angles. So we can just hit Control-R, add in an edge loop there, another one here, and then another one right here. And you'll immediately see that starts to come together, but we're going to accent that a little bit more. Let's also add one all the way along the windshield there. And then just for consistency's sake, even though you can't see it, we'll do one right in there. Because actually in some places of this, you will be able to see it. And so rather than potentially having to do more work later, let's just add those in now and go ahead and potentially prevent some work. So now I'm just going in, selecting all these by Alt-Shift right-clicking on them. And then we're just going to raise them up slightly along the Z-axis. And then I actually want to go in and we're going to select these ones. Again, with the same technique, Alt-Shift, right-click. And then we're just going to move them down a little bit like this. Maybe we'll deselect these bottom ones, move these down a bit. So it's just kind of flattening out these angles here. That top, maybe we can deselect that, and then we'll just move just this one. And so we've got kind of this flat angle. These ones here, we need to maybe go ahead and smooth out. So I'm just going to select this part of the loop, hit Control E, edge slide, bring it over a little bit. From the side view, I can bring it up, actually about there, and then these ones I can bring down a bit there to create a flat angle. Or actually what we ought to do is just remove this loop. So let's actually do that. We'll just select these, hit X, delete the edge loop. The same thing here, and here, here, and there. That way we can add in another loop right across here without having to go that extra step. I'll go and bring this one down a bit. And then we'll remove that one. So again, that's just all right click on it, hit X, and delete edge loop. And we forgot to delete that one there. Okay, so that gives us our nice sharp angles pretty easily. We just kind of let the topology do the work for us. Move that over just a little bit. Okay, and that looks pretty good. I think that I will go ahead and bring that over, just so we smooth out that little bit of an angle. Let's add in another loop right here. And I'm going to go ahead and add that on both sides. And that will actually just improve the look even more, because it'll allow us basically to have a flat edge plus a peak and a flat edge to really get that highlight nicely. Let's again do it down here. Okay, and again right there. And I think these, I might just go ahead and grab these and bring them all out just a little bit, about like that. Okay, let's add in some loops across these ones here so that they will sharpen up nicely right here along each side. And that's just Control R. And some of these actually, we don't actually want to go quite that strong. We get to slide that along a little bit. Same thing here. You know, we want a little bit of rounded form in there, just not quite as much as we were getting. These ones I might just go ahead and move over a bit like this. You notice if I kind of rotate my view around to semi-match the angle, then I don't have to move it along the X or any other axes to recorrect the angle so much. Okay, now what I want to do is add in another loop through here, which will give us a nice sharp edge from this side. You can see immediately how that improves the effect. Same thing over here. And then up top, I'd like to give, well, let's see, actually that looks pretty good. We kind of zoom out here, we can look at this a bit more. And actually, I think we might just call that quits. And kind of scale those in a little bit to sharpen them up. Okay, that looks pretty good. You notice we've got a slight edge right here that's coming down, so we can just select this whole thing, and maybe we'll just pull it down along the Z-axis a bit, and maybe across the X just a little bit. just ensure that we don't have any open areas. And actually that looks really good. So I think that we'll probably leave that just like it is, just kind of doing a once over to see what things I might have missed. You notice that from all angles, it's not always going to match. If we go over to some of our other views, you can see some of the differences. But really, I'm not a big fan of these right in here, but I like the way that it's represented in the concept. And so I'm following more closely with the concept than I am with the top view there. Although I do kind of like how these come across more. And so let's go ahead and do that. Let's just select each one of these about like that, then deselect onto there, and there we go. Just forgot a vertex. And we'll do the same thing. We'll grab these ones as well to move them over. And let's just pull them over to right about there. That looks pretty good. Although with that, let's go ahead and select this as well. And let's just pull that over along the x-axis a little bit. And we'll maybe pull that one down just a little. And I'm going to add in one more edge loop right here, which then I will take up a little bit along the z-axis and along the y, just so I smooth out this angle so I'm not making that extra flat. And then it allows me to here take this and just kind of bring it out a little to help round off that form. Okay, and that looks pretty good. Although perhaps, let me just see what this might look like if I take this, pull that up. Yeah, actually that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to take this edge loop, I'm going to hit Control E, slide it over just a little bit. Maybe I'll take these down along the Z so we fit this angle right in here. We could slide that over a little bit, then deselect this and Control E, slide this in. Grab that one, move it over a little bit, and sharpen it up. And then I don't really want to add in a third edge loop in here like we did on the others, just because it's going to show right in here. So I think what I'll do instead is I'm going to go ahead and use the creasing. Remember, we can crease it by hitting Shift E, and we'll just maybe set this to 0.75. Although actually I only want to go to right here, so I'll just deselect those ones by hitting B and then middle click and dragging, hit Shift E, 0.75, and then I'll do the same thing with this one. And this may not work, but we'll give it a shot. See if it can kind of save us some topology. And that actually looks pretty good. Okay, so, I think I've already discussed this a little bit, but as far as the creasing goes, you just want to be careful with the creasing because it's not going to give as clean of a result as using actual topology will. But again, obviously, but with the topology, you also need to be careful because you're adding in more polygons with every single loop, which can potentially, of course, or not potentially, but will increase your memory usage and also just how complex your scene is. But overall, your topology or extra topology will give a better result if you can use it. And sometimes the creasing tends to cause artifacts in your mesh, or not really artifacts, but just weird smoothing issues where it just doesn't look quite as good. And so that's where I like to use the extra edge loops rather than the creasing. But in some cases, such as this, the creasing can do just a little bit to help accent the effect rather than create the effect completely. Maybe I'll slide this one up just a little bit more along with this one. So I'm just selecting them and then hitting Control E and edge slide. And that looks pretty good, although I'll slide these ones as well. Okay, I think that'll do it for the windshield area. One last step would be just to go ahead and select this, select the windshield and hit P and separate by selection, and then we can go ahead and select it. Let's name it while we're at it. So we'll control click on it and it says geo_cockpit_ windshield. And this one should be this correct. Cockpit exterior, correct. And what I want to do is we're just going to go ahead and add in a solidify modifier to this choosing solidify, go over here, and we can kind of see the amount of thickness that it has currently. And let's go and set the thickness to perhaps 0.025. Looks just about right. You know, this ought to be pretty nice and thick. And that should be all we need to do, although we can go and say even thickness and high quality normals just to improve the result just a little bit in the case that it causes problems. Now you'll notice that we're getting some weird smoothing across the edges. That's due to the subsurf modifier. And so what we need to do is either add in extra edge loops all the way around the edges, or we should be able to fix it with the creasing, which of course isn't doing anything. So instead, let's just go in here. We'll add in an edge loop down to there, and then another edge loop back to there, and one right along the front. And that way you won't see that weird smoothing that we were getting when we applied or set the modifier. So that finishes off the windshield. The next section is we're going to go ahead and look at some more parts of the front, mostly the nose and such, and then we'll keep on detailing.